Hello and welcome to episode 9 of the That Guy's a Maniac podcast. Podcast that talks about video games because there aren't enough of those out there in the world. You're joined by me, pretty much do all the heavy lifting and carry this podcast almost single-handedly. Pansy Womon, aka Barley, and my assistant. Jog's body, I guess.
Oh, wow, you're such a dick. Such a dick.
If you give me the intro to do this, are you going to introduce yourself? Come on, you've learned your name.
Oh, fuck off. My name's Farley, and I'm a dick. Yeah.
No, that's my name.
Okay. Okay, but yeah,
now you confused the listeners.
It was a good impression, though, wasn't it?
Maybe not confuse the listeners.
Okay.
That bumbling excuse for a human being is Richie. You can. Oh God, I'm watching cutscenes from the game we're about to discuss, and I'm just glad I'm working from home. To be honest, you can follow our exploits on www.thatguys.co.uk. And today we've got a very special episode. Richie. Before that, Richie, who is sponsoring this week's podcast?
This week's podcast is brought to you by Planet June for all your nip needs.
Planet June?
Planeptune.
J or D? Planeptune.
Yeah, Planeptune, like Neptune, but with pla in front of it. Like Planet.
Come on,
Neptune
you've got to get the sponsor's name
together.
right. You've got to get the sponsor's name right. You've got to say it clearly.
Planeptune.
People will be out there googling Planet June.
Yeah, Planet June. We're with Duke Karis and the Harkonnens.
Planet June.
Oh,
for your sand needs.
Yeah, for your spice needs. We are the Fremen.
Or your spice.
Yeah. And giant worms and Kwisatz Haderach and all that sort of stuff.
Films which are too long and massively overrated.
I don't think they're overrated. It's generally considered shite. Well, I watched it recently, just because it's David Lynch, and yeah, it's shit. So,
did you watch the long version or the short version?
It felt really long. I mean, like there.
I know that.
I think there's one that's supposed to be like 4 hours or something like that. That was like the original cut. I don't think that exists as something you can watch. Really? Is it?
I think so. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, there's been various releases. You know, they keep seeming to find new ways to release that film.
The one that I watched was like 2.5 hours or something. Anyway, yeah, that is not what we're here to talk about.
10 minutes in.
Yeah, 10 minutes in. Fucking right. Yeah. So what we are here to talk about, is the hyperdimension Neptunia, mega dimension Neptunia, whatever dimension Neptunia series. Sort of coming off the back of what we were doing with the What Are You Playing, I have decided to pick up the latest in the series, which is Mega Dimension Neptunia V2, which is like Victory 2. The naming of this series is fucking nuts. But even just the names alone, but actually how they run in a linear order are completely crazy. But yeah, I am jumping in and playing that one. Barley, did you have some questions?
So, this series is called Hyperdimension Neptunia, right?
No. The first few are called Hyperdimension. Then you've got Mega
Hyperdimension.
Yes.
Okay, what is the name of this franchise?
I would say the Neptunia franchise is probably the best way.
We're talking about the Neptunia franchise, and I really want to hear your thoughts on this series, which I've been playing. There's some nuggets of kind of cool ideas in there, which I'm really interested to hear about. But first of all, I'm gonna have to be really upfront about the fact that this is as anime a game as you can get, right? And so, I've got a rolling stream of YouTube videos up in the background for inspiration, and all the ickiness of anime games is represented here, right? We've got boob zooming in transformations. I've seen in the how long have I been watching this video? In the 3 minutes I've been watching this video, I've seen at least 8 crotch shots. We've already covered the fact that this series has ridiculous titles. I don't know, but I can guess that if you were to play all these games in a row, kind of as they came out chronologically, you'd have to play them on 18 different systems.
No. You can play them all on all on
Is that
PC.
correct?
I would say so. Yeah. Like you can play them on different ones. I don't.
They just come out for PC and.
No, you can get them on other platforms definitely, but
Okay.
they're not spread across a million different ones. There's not like an exclusive version for only one system or anything like that, or anything obscure.
Okay, it's not like.
Although I think there.
Kingdom Hearts.
No, it's not like Kingdom Hearts. Although I think there is a mobile game that only exists in Japan or something like that.
Okay.
Fuck it.
So if those things don't appeal, or if you do get interested in them, you're gonna have to confront these things with this series. But one of the cooler things about it, and I'm sure some of the stuff will come off again, is what would you say the premise of this game is?
The premise of this game. Okay,
what's
so
the one-line how if you were to describe this series to someone, how would you describe it?
Oh, it's a tough one to do in one line, I'll be honest with you. But basically, they are anthropomorphized
I think I've got an idea.
consoles.
You can tell me whether this is right or wrong.
Okay, go on.
High school girls, but video game consoles.
Yeah, that's probably a good way. A good way of doing it. But they also have special powers.
Yeah.
And are potentially gods of some kind as well. As you go deeper into it.
So what kind of game is this? Is it like an RPG? Is it essentially a dating sim? Is it a action game? Is it bits of both?
There's zero dating sim in there. As much as you would think, oh my god, it's all these, anime girls and stuff like that. It's bound to be that sort of shit there. There's nothing like that in there. It is essentially a sort of action RPG, and it's RPG in its rawest form. It's really, it's turn-based, but there's also sort of like strategy, as in like where you position. And the rest of it is just visual novel banter. And it is just banter most of the time. That's how I would sort of balance the two there. And there's a lot of intrinsicities when it comes to the actual fighting, and there's a lot of leveling up and a lot of, in the usual way with like Japanese games, you've got New Game Plus, and you've also got the ability to go sort of well beyond your level and do these crazy fights, sort of like the equivalent of like Ruby Weapon and Emerald Weapon. You really have to level up and get to these sort of things to do those sort of special challenges. You get a lot like that in there.
And so the idea is these girls which go to a high school, but
they don't go to high school. But there is no high school. No. There's nothing like that. They are gods essentially that represent video game consoles in their lands. So they exist. This is me delving into a plot which should not be delved into. Okay, just so I'm clearing this up. They are gods which live off the shares. So they exist and they are powerful based on the shares of people who are invested in their land, i.e. people who are playing their console. So it's essentially a sort of retelling of the story of console wars. So it's just like Nintendo versus Sega versus Xbox. So it's just kind of all these different systems coming together, and who's got shares. But eventually, it's as much as they're warring against each other, it's more of a rivalry. And because they're anime girls, they're like the best of friends or frenemies sort of thing.
I'm just watching it. Is the Xbox series, the breasts?
Yeah, Vert. Lady
insane.
Greenheart.
Yeah, she's just transformed, and it's like watching a.
So yeah, she now has full-on underboob, I believe.
Yeah, it's like watching a bin bag full of melons floating along a river. So why do you like these games? When obviously there's a lot.
I picked up the first one, and it was just like one of these random Steam sales, and I thought the premise of it looked fun. I was like, what the hell's this? It's very anime, and then I read reviews, people talking about how it was hilarious, sort of like the Deadpool of sort of video games. I'm like, what? Really? I don't understand. Why is this a thing? So I actually played through the first one, and it didn't hook me.
What is the first one?
Right. Okay. The first one is named Hyperdimension Neptunia. Rebirth 1.
The first one.
Okay.
It's called Rebirth.
Yes.
1.
Now it's called Rebirth 1 because it is actually a remake of the first one, but it's not really a remake, it's just a ported version. That makes sense?
Yeah. So it makes as much sense.
Yeah, exactly.
As these games' titles make. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah. So the first one sort of run through, and the dialogue is genuinely funny. I'd seen the meme of like nip, do you even nip, bro, and all that sort of stuff, and I was like, what is this? And as it turns out, it's basically the character Neptunia or Neptune. She's like aware of everything, and she's also like, she speaks about the plot, and it's memey, and it's also very sort of geeky gamey. She's sort of saying, wait a minute, we don't want to enter into that conversation, otherwise we'll set a flag and we won't be able to return to the save point. It's like the banter there is just, it's so much fun, and it is very Deadpool-y, in that sort of fashion, in the way that he breaks the fourth wall and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, there is constant referential points with that, and all of the characters they sort of talk on that referentialness. So they were saying, please stop breaking the fourth wall, or that sort of stuff. Can we just pay attention to the plot and continue on here rather than you going off on a tangent? But it does it all the time, but it does it in so many different ways. Like every so often there's like a cut to two of the characters just chatting as if they're on a sort of sofa on a chat show, and they're just sort of explaining, so what's going to happen in this next episode? Well, and it's just that sort of banter, like being able to like call upon itself, where the rest of the game is actually really solid as well. So in between all of the dungeons and the RPGs and the mechanics, the in-between cutscenes are just, they're fun to read, and when in most cases you would just skip them,
So let's talk about some of the characters.
Yep.
Because pretty much all of the major video game systems are represented, including kind of systems that we tend to think of as being as more Western than Japanese. Yeah.
So you get lots of different ones. So initially you have Neptune, it's such a plagiarizing name. she's called Neptune, but she's actually representative of the Sega Saturn.
Okay.
So Saturn, Neptune, that's where it covers from.
So the main character of this game is anthropomorphized Sega Saturn.
Yes.
Okay.
Who wears a white hoodie and has little D-pad hair clips and massive bangs. Bangs, I said.
Mm-hmm.
So she has two forms, which is her normal form, which is the hoodie, and then she has she's goddess Whiteheart, I think, when she transforms. So she represented as a Sega Saturn, and she transforms. Her attitude also changes as well when she becomes a goddess. She becomes more serious and less goofy and less memey. So I think it's just like her, what's it called? Just because she's the main character and constantly refers to herself as the main character, she gets to have this cooler alter ego where she's a bit more sensible. But yeah, so you have the four main goddesses of this series. You have Neptune, you have Noir as well, and she is the first one that really gets sort of introduced to you. She is goddess Blackheart as well. She's representing the PS2, or I think she actually represents just PlayStation in general. Her land is called La Station, or Lay Station, PlayStation sort of thing, but without the P. And she runs under the constant tsundere trope, which I'm not going to go into and explain, but yeah, she just falls into this, unable to express her true feelings when in fact she is really, really friendly with the other one, that friendly rivalry thing that I was mentioning before. You then have Blanc, Blanc, and she is the representation of Nintendo, potentially the Nintendo Wii, and she is very bipolar. So she's very, very quiet most of the time, and she reads things, and then she gets really angry. And the last one you have is Lady Vert, who is representative of Microsoft Xbox, and because, like, yeah, she's very, very ample-chested, but I think that's supposed to be explained because you know, the Xbox is just a great big massive chunky machine, and the big Fisher-Price control pad, you know. So those are the four main characters. There are a ton of other characters as well, and when we get onto the second game, I'll explain that a little bit more. But yeah, those are the four main, and they end up sort of rivalry with each other, but you end up using them to come together to defeat. And this is I spoilers, but they defeat basically cheat codes. So the main bad guy, in the first one is called R4. Now I don't know if you remember the R4 cartridges.
The R4 cartridges, yeah.
Yeah. So she's basically named after.
Which it's not just cheat codes; it's piracy as well, right?
Yeah, it is piracy. That's exactly. I shouldn't have said cheat codes. Yeah, it's exactly that. Piracy. So they're fighting piracy together. They're coming together to fight piracy. I don't look into any hidden or greater, deeper meaning. These games are anime girls who are also video game consoles that transform and have got a good action RPG in the background.
And so you played the first one, and you weren't. Yeah, I think you were on the verge of saying you weren't that taken with it.
Yeah. So initially I wasn't that taken with it, but as basically I just sort of delved in and picked it up a little bit more. I realised it was a little bit repetitive, and that interested. But then I found myself thinking, I like the story, I kind of want to see where this goes. So I was pulled back in almost by the visual novel side of the game, rather than the action RPG. And then the two kind of played off each other, and I enjoyed the series an awful lot. Yeah, and I mean, there are other support characters and things like that in it, but yeah, ultimately, yeah, I played the first one, and I played it through completion. I did not do any of the New Game Plus stuff because, well, I'll be honest with you, I looked on Game FAQs what was necessary for a lot of the New Game Plus stuff, and what you wanted to finish off a new game before you started your New Game Plus. I thought, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm just going to move on to the next episode, as it were, and enjoy the plot in that fashion.
And so, what's the next game?
So the next game is the first three games are basically Hyperdimension Neptunia Rebirth 1, Hyperdimension Rebirth 2, Hyperdimension Rebirth 3. And they kind of are very, very similar games. They don't change the mechanics too much. I believe in the first one you can only have 3 characters on the screen, and then that by the third one eventually it's 4 characters within, like, when I say on the screen, I mean in the actual action RPG, you've sort of got 4 characters there, and so you're sort of playing the turn-based stuff with more people.
Yeah, it looks maybe this is from later games, but it looks very much like the Persona series.
Not a series I've played, but yeah, possibly.
Yeah, you've got 3 characters out. You're rotating through your actions. Sort of an arena-based fight. Are there transformations called HDD?
Yeah.
So
Hard
like
disk drive.
Okay, not
Yeah.
HD, but then also double D as in bra size.
It could be a play on those words, but yeah, there's a lot of when you're actually playing the game, there's a lot of references to sort of like computer upgrades and things like that. And they are also like, they're referred to as goddesses, but they're also referred to as the CPUs as well.
Okay.
So like, you know, Lady Vera is the CPU of I forget what the name of her. But yeah, I'm sorry, Lady Noir is the CPU of Last Station. And yeah, things like that.
And so do the first 3 games follow the same arc? This kind of anti-piracy arc?
Yes. Also, characters kind of seem to forget they know each other and things like that. It's all very. But this never happened in the first one, so it's just kind of, you go with the flow with it, and you're actually just kind of following Neptune's adventures, and she'll just sort of at one point sort of say, yeah, we did this before, did we not? Are we following the same memory loss trope as the first game? And things like that. So they just generally hang a lamp on a lot of those kind of things plot wise. But
I have to be really careful. You have to be really careful, I think, in games when they do that, because once or twice, okay, haha, they kind of know what the game is feeling. But then if they do it too much, like, well, it's a shit trope and a kind of a boring part of gaming. And so all you're doing is kind of pointing it out, but then you're going to still force us to sit through it.
I remember... No, because like when I say it follows the same arc, there are differences enough that you don't really care too much when they hang a lamp on it in that fashion. And they do. I suppose what you're saying, you have to do it really carefully. Yeah, you kind of let it away. It certainly doesn't detract away from anything else. To actually go back to your question there, in the second one it is actually different, but the second one, I'm just going to jump in and sort of explain a little bit more about it, because there's extra characters in the second one who feature more in the rest of the series as well. So as well as those characters being the CPUs, the goddesses of their lands and what they do, they also have and this is a classic anime trope: younger sisters.
Right. How
So
old
they-
are these main characters supposed to be? Dare I ask?
Oh god! Again, anime rules. They're probably thousands of years old. They secretly look, very young.
Mhm.
Yeah, they have their younger sisters. And...
Just in case.
Yeah,
Just in case the legalness of the older versions just wasn't doing it for you.
uh, no, actually, they're there as backup CPUs, but they also have their own representations as well. So, Neptune's younger sister is Nepgear,
Right.
who is the Game Gear. So she's the
Okay.
mobile version. You have Noir's younger sister Uni, who is the PSP. And Blank's got two younger sisters, twins, Rom and Ram. And the reason she's got two younger sisters, as the Nintendo CPU, they are representative of the DS dual screen, which I thought was quite cool and fun. And because there's no handheld for the Microsoft, unfortunately, Lady Vert doesn't have a younger sister. And she gets quite sad about that occasionally and tries to steal Netgear away a lot. Fun.
I'm surprised she doesn't have an older sister who's like a office work-based sister who represents Excel and Word.
Or the paperclip. She just have a paperclip.
It just has a familiar paperclip familiar.
Yeah. And in fact, I've just noticed that the Rebirth 2 is actually called Sisters Generation. And yeah, you play through most of the game as these younger sister versions. And they're ridiculous. The younger sisters have got these stupid powers way beyond the stupidness of the other ones. So Uni has basically, she's like a sniper, but she like creates these giant massive rifles that like just ridiculous, and that is her like special power, like big rifles that she fires from far away. And Rom and Ram turn into sort of D&D magic throwers, whereas Netgear just sort of remains the same. But yeah, they're the main backup CPUs that appear in the second series, and they are there to try and find their older sisters and get them back and alive, and that sort of thing.
A lot of this seems to be set in like hot springs or saunas.
There's a whole load of usual video game locations. There's a lot of Icelands, Firelands, what's it called? Just grasslands and things like that. But actually, some of the enemies are really, really cool as well. So, what are you watching at the moment?
It's from a channel, and it's called 10 Reasons Why Netgear is Waifu Material.
Yeah, probably.
And we've seen her on the beach. We've seen her in hot springs.
I mean, there is, like, just to put a big sort of disclaimer on all of this, there is a ton of fan service in this game. And you're just like, what the fuck am I looking at? Should I be allowed to look at this? And that there is a lot of sort of like, oh no, I've just lost my towel, but there's bubbles sort of over where my tits would be, and it's just like, oh, okay. But that is just like the banter that you go through, and it seems to be something that happens in Japanese games. I don't know. I mean, should I care more that there's such a thing, or I don't know. I enjoyed it for what it was, and there was some like fun funniness in there, but without, you're just kind of, oh, okay. I'm sort of glad I'm not, exactly as you said at the start of the show, you're glad you're not looking at those videos in work.
Yeah, or playing on the PSP on the tube.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Yeah, it's hard to decide whether this is hyper feminist, right? We've got an all-female cast, and they're not all depicted as virtuous, can do no wrong characters. And so, is it hyper feminist, or is it the opposite because they're all kicking around in their school uniform type dresses with their pantsuit out and their boobs bouncing around?
I wouldn't say it is for or against or strikes any notes for feminism whatsoever. There is like probably 3 main characters, not even main, 3 mentions of male characters in the entire game, and that is it. Really, it is not a thing. Everyone is just female in it, and I'm sure the voiceover actresses were very, very happy about that.
I'm sure they were. So where did we get to? So number 2, the sisters are introduced, which are all the handheld systems, which is fun.
Yep. Along with that, there's actually other main staples as well in the series. So this game is actually brought out by ComputerSoft and IF Games. So there's actually 2 characters in it called Effie and Compa, who are our characters, and they are there. It is a thing, and I believe it
isn't Famitsu in this series as well.
Yes, she's actually in the spin-off series. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, like there's so many of their sister companies are in there as additional characters, and they make calls to it as well. So there's one character which I enjoyed playing as called Cave, and Cave do nothing but bullet hell shooters. I say nothing but there's a lot of reference to bullet hell shooters, and she's in there as a character, and she actually has like a bullet hell style special attack, which is cool as fuck to watch. Yeah, like there's a whole load of these other companies as well, and it's almost like they asked them, we kind of want to put you in our game as a character, how would you represent her? And so they've got like these designs for like Famitsu and things like that, just so that they can be there. And yeah, they are additional characters that you pick up. They never ever get as powerful as the CPUs though. This is one thing, is like when you're playing through and you're sort of leveling them up, one thing to remember is that because all the CPUs have their transformation to become more powerful, they end up being the most powerful ones in the game.
And so, how many games are there in total in this series?
How many in total? God, I would say there's about 8 or 9.
Okay.
So there is Neptunia Rebirth 1, 2, and 3. There's Neptunia U, which is a spin-off game, which is sort of like pure action, no RPG. So you get a sandbox and you go in and you start attacking things. You can do the transformations and stuff like that. It's sort of like it's pure action, no sort of selecting special powers and things like that. Is go in / combo. So don't mix them up. There's also Hyper Devotion Noir, which is technically not the Neptunia series. Hyper Devotion is another spin-off, which is, it's all sort of miniature chibi versions of them, and it is a block puzzle thing. There is Cyber Dimension. Oh no, sorry, missed one out. There is Mega Tag Mention Blank, which is again another action-based one, and the story in that one is completely bullshit nuts. That if you probably got the idea that they were in a high school because that one is set in a high school for the visual novel side, and they're also in an acting club, and there's also zombies, and that is a thing, and it makes very, very little sense, but you play the action sequences, and I'll be honest with you, I found out there was a skip button, so a lot of the visual novel stuff was just skipped because it just stopped making any sense whatsoever. Because it wasn't just that they were in a play, it was also like a play of a play, and it might have just been like blank reading about making a play. It's fucking too many levels. Done. Don't care. For what it is, and it was quite a shallow, action game. You also have Cyber Dimension Neptunia, which is the latest of that action series, but they also have turned it into a pretend MMO. So it's
right.
It's really weird because throughout this entire series,
because you couldn't get any more meta than anime game.
Oh, you can
on consoles and game companies.
Just wait for
we're
this.
Gonna set it in a pseudo MMO.
Yeah, but that pseudo MMO has existed in the series before, because that is what Vert plays all the time, because she's a bit of a loner because she doesn't have her little sister, so she plays MMO video games all the time. So she plays 4 Goddesses Online, as it's called, and so they turned that into an action RPG game. And there is also the one that came out in Switch recently, and other consoles and stuff like that. There was Super Neptunia RPG, the 2D one, which is kind of Metroidvania meets visual novel.
Really?
Yeah.
Flip this one up. What's it called?
Super Neptunia RPG.
Super Neptunia RPG. Switch. Oh wow, yeah. That's a completely different visual style.
Yep. But it's the same characters, the same banner. I actually struggled with that game because
crazy.
I didn't really like it very much. The different visual art style meant that I wasn't able to really see what was going on, what am I supposed to be picking up, where am I going next, and I got quite bored with it very quickly. I suppose it was too hard for me. And then the final one that is available is the Mega Dimension Neptunia V2. There's also Mega Dimension V2R, which has VR capabilities, because I'm sure it's necessary.
Right.
And there is actually, now that you mention it, there is some other ones that I think are only on PSP. And when I say PSP, not even on Vita, I think there's a spin-off one which is kind of like a sports game or a sports day or something like that, and it introduces a character, because you have Nepgear, you also have Nepgia, who is like exactly the same model as Nepgear, but for some reason is always got an open mouth and is permanently like got this scared look on her face, and she's just supposed to be like an evil version of Nepgear. I don't know. I didn't play that one because I don't have a PSP. But yeah, that's how many exist in that series. I'm sure there are other iterations in existence. Like I said, there was what's it called? There's a mobile game of some sort. I'm sure they also turn up in lots of other games as well. So you've seen like I think you get Neptune sort of turning up in different fashions. I think there's a Neptune car in a driving game, and there's like spaceships of part of their transformations or their ultra transformations. They can turn into flying spaceship things as well, just because you know the CPUs of consoles can do that. And they feature as like flying things in a space game that I can't remember the name of, but yeah, like they exist in different universes as well.
So tell me about the third sort of gaming series.
So the third one is it's probably my favorite of the lot, and it's the one that I actually spent a lot more time on and grinding the end final bosses and stuff like that. The third one is it's called Generation V. So it also kind of seems to be like the fifth game in the series as well as the third one, just to confuse all matters. But they're basically the Victory generation, and it's really, I mean, the whole series is quite weird. So they jump into another dimension, or Neptune falls into another dimension, which is very, very similar to the one that she's come from, and in fact meets all of her friends who have no knowledge of her. But instead of her existing, Plutia exists there rather than Neptune, and Plutia is the representation of what's it called? The Mega Drive rather than the Saturn. So she's just another Sega CPU sort of thing. She's that character is a bit weird. She seems nice and sweet. She carries around this sort of teddy bear and all cutesy and frilly. And then when she turns into her transformed goddess form, she gets a bit like sadomasochistic and like goddess Iris Heart, and yeah, she's a bit of an odd one. But it's that whole weird second dimension where the Mega Drive was the CPU rather than the Saturn, and then both dimensions end up crossing over with each other. So there was like a time lag in one of them where the CPUs hadn't existed and they were being brought into existence as the consoles came out, like in the real world. And so you're going back and revisiting that one at the same time, and it's quite cool because Vert gets to meet Vert, and Noir gets to meet Noir, and you've got this other new CPU, and then there's this other CPU that's kicking about around at the same time, called PC, who is the PC-16. Do you know that console?
No.
Okay, so the PC-16 console is it's the TurboGrafx console.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, and I don't think it got like a European release. I think it was like US and Japan only. Japan. Japan.
USSR.
But yeah, they so they've got all these other characters, and there's an anime series of the Hyper Dimension Neptunia series, and it is based entirely on the story of that one, which is all weird and odd. And again, they all team up against R4 and the evil piracy people. And like, yeah, that's the thing. But yeah, just to sort of move on from that, like the final game that I'm playing at the moment, I say final, the latest in the series, which came out a few years ago actually, yeah, it's probably going to follow exactly the same thing. But as I'm playing it, they've introduced a new character who is based on the Dreamcast. So they're doing the same trope again of, I've fallen into another dimension. Oh, here's another Sega CPU. Gonna become friends with her and save her from piracy people. But yeah, I've just started that one. I say just started, I'm 20 hours in. And I have barely scratched the surface of it, I think. But yeah, as it proceeds on, I shall talk some more on about it and get back to you guys. But so tell me a little bit.
What's that one? What's that one called?
That's called the Mega Dimension Neptunia Victory
7.
2. Victory 2.
God.
So
Okay.
if you think of number 3 as V, Victory, this is Victory 2. This is the sequel to 3 in sub-fashion.
Okay. Wow.
Yep.
These games. What I find really interesting about these, and I guess it's, it's a big part of kind of otaku culture and Japanese subcultures and anime girls and fandom, is kind of boiling down ideas or concepts into these characters that represent things or that embody certain things, which you see all the time in mascots, in manga, all of that kind of stuff. And so to take video games, consoles, and with the broadest of brushstrokes, the kind of console wars, and then boil that down. And I guess it's just perhaps a different way of things are done in Japan than perhaps done in the West.
I mean,
if this was done in,
it's
go on.
Definitely very, very, very Japanese. Like, there is no denying it. Like, if you like anime culture, or if you, in fact, a better way to put it is, if you don't like anime culture or anything like that, you will hate the fuck out of this game, because it doesn't.
But I think if this was done in a Western kind of way, right? This would be your typical kind of. Do you remember 90s, like 90s through to early 2000s licensed games, right? It would be some shitty 3-dimensional platformer with all the characters that you recognize from, the film or the movie. You'd have collectibles to get, and it would just be horrible. Just when we were just knee deep in those kind of, it's a licensed spin-off, it's probably shite. And what's interesting to me about these, because these go back to 2010, is that although on the one hand they're very kind of surface, ephemeral, based on kind of themes and ideas and boiling things down to the basic, is that they do have this huge kind of interconnected storyline. And yes, just from what you've described, it is super tropey, right? We've got dimensions slipping and lost memories and all this business. So, it's not paving, creating a new kind of way of telling stories or different kind of stories.
Well, actually, I mean, as I mentioned, it's very self-referential. I think the game. Oh God, I've got to get it, the blooming. First person, second person, third person. The game knows that it's tropey, and it is deliberately hanging a lamp on the fact that it's tropey as well. It is like not afraid to go there, which is fun. And again, you do see that in a couple of Western things as well. But it's not about when you're playing the game, you're just kind of like, they're making fun of the fact that they do this dimension stuff. It's fine, and you automatically forgive them for that.
Yeah, but then do you not get the feeling that you're playing it and you'll get some, super internal reference that you'd only know if you were quite into games, and then this character represented this console, this character represented this console, I don't know, oh, this is the hot coffee scandal or whatever it might be. Do you not get that feeling of kind of looking around the room to right? Everyone, right? Did you all get that? And for everyone to be like, no. No, I didn't. Is it something you feel is this is speaking directly to kind of you and your interests and your knowledge, even though perhaps some of it you might miss.
Yeah, but I mean, you could say that about absolutely anything, to be honest. And yes, there are definitely some in-jokes that I miss out on, and there's definitely there's game dev language in there as well. Like, because I have worked in the industry, I kind of know what they're talking about. But like, for your normal average person who's playing the game, that's just gonna gloss over. So there is something there for everyone. I suppose it's kind of like the old Captain Pugwash sort of thing. The kids weren't meant to get the fact that it was called Roger the Cabin Boy. You pass that over. There are jokes there for everyone. Some of them you'll get, some of you won't get.
Yeah, but it seems like it's more so than many other games. It's very much a gamer's game, right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe you could pick it up and play it and not really understanding what these things are representing and thematic of, and still enjoy it. But that's the thing that I find interesting. How how are they making enough money on these crazy games for there to now be 20 games in this series, spin-offs, an anime, a manga, pulling some huge names, working on the soundtrack and working on this and working on that.
I mean, all of those jokes are they're padding out of what's already perfectly fine jokes. Like what I was saying was, it is quite memey and it's quite fourth persony. It's not. It doesn't exclude people at the same time. It took me a while. I didn't click about R4 until nearly the end of the first game. Like R4 cartridges. Oh yeah. Like I didn't even think about that in that sort of fashion. I even thought that Neptune was the Master System for a long time. I didn't click Neptune and Saturn, but it didn't really matter. I knew that she was supposed to be like Sega related, and they never say that. So there is plenty for you to look into, and like, yeah, fuck it, open a Wikipedia thing and it explains it for you. It's like it's not the worst thing in the world, and you don't miss out on things because there is a lot of character-driven building going on in those games. As much as the characters are quite shallow tropes, it is still fun, and I would say that the reason it's gone on for so long is like Neptune as a character is very, very strong, super strong. That's why you have so many memes around her alone. That it's like she can definitely pull her weight in a lot of different mediums.
So, why do you play these games?
Why do I play these games? Well, for one, I guess I do like Japanese culture. And I suppose it hangs.
I hate Japanese culture. Yeah.
Like Japanese culture stuff is quite good in there, and I mean it is very, very Japanesey and anime sort of based as well. The gameplay itself, I was thoroughly enjoying, like grinding through the dungeons. I don't know, I felt a kinship with some of the characters as well. It was great just to sort of see like them progress and the interactions and banter that you got to have with them. So I suppose it's kind of like that otaku culture sort of stuff that you kind of feel part of. Maybe that's kind of an answer to your previous question, because all of this stuff happens, and because it is quite like it is a shallow story, it does make you feel inclusive to otaku culture without having to have read 15 million mangas. You know?
Yeah, and this is, I think this is where, broadly speaking, being a gamer in the UK is so weird. we just off the bat, we're just situated in a weird place. Because despite the fact that quite a bit of gaming history happens in the UK, and then it kind of moves to Japan and the States, our access, and I think it still continues to this day, our kind of access to these things, including less so nowadays, but the video games, manga in general, trying to follow a manga, let alone walk down to the high street to find them is really kind of difficult. And although obviously lots of people are into the broad umbrella of things that falls under kind of otaku and gamer culture, so from figures, anime, music, Vocaloids, all that business, you don't ever see it here in the UK, and even rarer do you meet somebody in real life and who is obviously into things. We don't really have huge conventions, so it's it's a Japanese subculture which is now kind of being pushed as something that makes Japan cool, and then in America a lot of that's kind of been adopted, but then from very early on they'd run Dragon Ball. They have this huge kind of comics industry, whereas I was thinking just now, where's my nearest comic shop? I think I have to get on a train to another city in order to even get to a comic shop which may or may not carry the most popular translated mangas and
I mean, I feel like
volume
you're being
2, 4 and 6.
Yeah, but I feel like you're being quite old-fashioned there, because your nearest comic store or your nearest otaku shop is at the end of Google.
Yeah, but
the
then
move to online has been like massively culturally changing, and like I know that you're saying like you can't see that or you don't see that much, but like I've seen it a lot. Like even 10 years ago when I was back up in Glasgow, the otaku culture there was exploding. Like there was gaming shops and comic book shops, living cafes and stuff like that. Sorry.
I will say Scotland is a different beast.
Is it? Alright.
yeah, it is.
Okay.
It's something you see more of. Glasgow, Edinburgh. You'll walk across a geek shop. Oh my god! There's a independent geek store. Go in and you've got everything from Star Wars, Luke
Skywalker.
And yes, a lot. And yes, a lot of it's online. But then there is something, as we're all kind of finding out now with the lockdown and pandemic, is with accessing things digitally. You kind of access and enjoy these things and think about these things in your head, but there's no kind of outlet for it, right? To actually talk to other people about these things. And so for me, this is one of those really interesting things where you're tapping into, this game is essentially in love with a subculture of a subculture of a subculture, and because of your background and where you're playing it, a subculture of that. It's this really, really kind of tip of the iceberg type product, which to me makes it really interesting. But can you imagine trying to explain this series to somebody who hasn't ever played games before? Or
I just spent 42 minutes of the initial part of this conversation trying to explain it, and as I was explaining it to myself, I was like, "Fucking hell, what is this series?" It's a very, very hard thing to explain. But
I'm glad it exists. I'm not. Early on, I was kind of criticizing it just for its general anime trappings, but I'm glad I think I'm glad that it exists, but also I'm kind of perplexed that it does. You know.
I'm amazed it exists, and I'm amazed it actually made Western Shores and actually has a good translation as well.
Oh yeah, because
like that fan service that's in there is like you would think, right, okay, but it's like getting Nintendo releases. It got through Sony, and it's just like, okay, I'm going to defer to their judgment. I feel a bit weird looking at this, but if they think it's cool, I'm alright. You know.
And also the effort, you know, because a lot of these are text-based games. I'm sure, you know, in the way that the always seems to be the case with Japanese language, there are loads of, you know, double entendres and wordplay that just doesn't translate.
Yeah, but Nep was actually quite highly praised on her translation to English as well. So like, yeah, there's actually the company that did it, or like how they've done it is to keep a lot of those jokes in there, and because it's the same company, they keep those jokes flowing in the different ones. And along with that, there's just a sort of level of familiarity that's actually quite nice. Like, even though it's very blatantly taken from Japan, they kind of they don't pretend it's not. So I'm sure there is jokes in there. It would have been funnier in the original Japanese, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So, what's the future for this series? Is there another big one on the horizon? It seems to be going from strength to strength.
I haven't seen much. I know that like the one that I'm playing at the moment, Victory 2, it actually got a little bit of a critique because because it ended up quite hard towards the end of the game, which probably just means people didn't grind enough to get high enough levels, because that's how those games work. But so V2 got a difficulty tweak. V2R, sorry, got a difficulty tweak. And I don't know what's going to happen next, because we had Super Neptunia RPG come out, which, as I said, it's a bit weak, or I didn't particularly like it. I would like it to return to the 3D action RPG, which I'm actually just throwing myself back into and enjoying at this moment. I mean, I don't know where it's gonna go next. I like it, and I hope to see more of it. My expectation, though, is there is a rumor that V2 or Mega Dimension Neptunia V2 is going to come to the Switch. It's out in Japan, but it might come to the Western side. Who knows? But if it does that probably means that they'll do the first 3 as remasters for the Switch as well. And to be honest, I'd love to see if you pick them up or not. Probably not. No, probably not. Just on the grounds that it sounds like a huge investment, right? You were saying with the one you're playing at the moment, you're 15 hours in, not sure if you've left a tutorial yet. You've only got 2 characters. Well, I mean, yeah, I suppose I think it's more you just you spend more time like on the visual menus, and you're like, the visual novel side of things, and I'm happy to like put that down and continue on with my work, and then I'll pick it up and play on or something like that. It's like, I think I could have been more efficient getting to where I am at this point. That being said, like the second game, I remember because it was the sisters' generation, but I knew the older sisters were in it, and I played it. I think it was probably about 30 hours. It's like, when the fuck are the elder sisters gonna get in it? I feel like I'm playing as these pretend other characters for the time being. You know, like this is taking forever, and yeah, it's quite near the end. But yeah, it's just like okay. But, I don't think it's any more of investment than any other game. Like you can delve super deep into the collective side of things and get the upgrades. Probably something that I didn't mention or touch on is like everything is quite customizable because these are obviously your anime girls. You can get to dress them up as well. Everything that you get dressing up wise, you don't really unlock as you go through the game. It is post game. So, yeah.
I think maybe now's not the time to do it. I think we perhaps need to have a whole podcast on it because we're both fans of dressing up in games.
Yeah.
Huge fans.
Definitely.
And I think finally, it seems like in the last few years the games industry is finally kind of getting onto the fact that people love dressing stuff up or customizing stuff.
Yeah.
What do you know about? I don't even know how you pronounce it. VVV tune, VVV tune, triple V tune,
Triple V tune.
Triple V tune.
TUNE.
VVV TUNE.
Is it not VVV Tunia?
No.
Okay. Nothing. Although,
Okay.
apparently that's the next game?
Upcoming action RPG. Coincide with the 10th anniversary of the Neptunia series. This game follows the CP users' virtual idols. Of course it does.
Teaming up with idols. Oh my god.
Me and you of Neutral to save planet Emo from the invaders known as Anti.
Oh wow. That is amazing.
This game guest stars actual virtual YouTubers. Oh my god.
Oh god.
Okay.
Sorry.
Looks like we're going deeper.
Yeah, so I'm looking at this one, and this looks like it's more on the side of Neptunia U Mega Tag Mention and the Goddess 4 online.
Mega Tag Mention. This just sounds like when you've not taken care of your piles.
Mega Tag Mention.
And things have gone out of hand. You've got Mega
because
Tag
they they introduced a tag in and tag out system, so they named it. But yeah, this seems to be like they're all shooting things, so they've all got guns. Have they made a third-person shooter? Wow.
I mean, why not?
Yeah,
not?
yeah. Why,
what genre is left untouched?
Why not merge it with them all being idols? Wow, that is. I did not know anything about this. Wow. This is a happy surprise. But yeah, bloody hell. So it is... Oh, this is fucking nuts. I don't know how accessible this is to the Western world. Like, I don't know who all of these virtual YouTubers are. I don't think I've even seen a virtual YouTuber.
I know, I was just thinking after we finish recording, I'm going to start looking at some of these virtual YouTubers.
Wow. Okay. Mental.
Can't be worse. Can't be worse than real YouTubers, I guess.
Or other podcasters. HoloLive, Game Club Project, and
Update.
Wow. This is
Horror Academia, Revdoll, and many more.
This is fucking nuts. Bloody hell. Like, how is this even... Okay, it's a thing. It's super niche, but again, I'm probably in the same... what's it called? Vein of what you were saying just earlier, which was, how do these games exist? I mean, do they get sponsorship from, like, I don't know, these Virtual YouTubers? I don't know. Oh, you know what? I've forgotten one of the other games that exist, and we should probably touch on, which is the Sega Hard Girls crossover.
Okay.
So, unless, again, this must be some sort of a thing, but there also exists another series in Japan called Sega Hard Girls. And
Sega Hard Girls.
Sega Hard Girls. So the Sega
Is
Hard
this-
Girls.
I'm Googling it now, right? Yeah.
Careful what you type.
Yeah.
This is another series of girls which represent Sega hardware. Like a completely different series. Where this is anime girls that represent Sega peripherals, machines, and things like that.
Which is so funny to me because, you know, once again, in the UK, Sega pretty much died, right? It had in this country, it had this weird kind of presence in that there's a handful of super scummy arcades, and then when they stopped producing consoles, essentially kind of died. I mean, now they're a fantastic publisher or developer of games, and so it's weird. It was kind of like hearing about oh yeah, didn't you hear about this this British soap opera where Woolworths and CNA are characters.
Wow. Yeah.
So to hear that kind of Sega secretly, not so secretly, but secretly lives on and is something that people actually recognize and refer to enough to have not one but at least two series where versions of its products, characters, and hardware are protagonists in their series.
Yeah, exactly. So this was a crossover of two different series, independent series that both represent hardware or consoles as anime girls.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is mental.
Yeah, it's just part of that trend, right? You get it with them. It's so weird. I've been doing a lot of proper academic reading about it. Because I don't remember how I got into it. It was via some finding out about some mascot and then the kind of personification of different ideas into these different kind of characters. So there's a couple of quite good books on it, but they're all because it's sociology. They're all really at a kind of loss to describe kind of how and what happened. So one of them is about moe. I think it's moe. I don't know how you pronounce it, moe or moe, which is this term which was bandied around a lot in the 90s. Kind of a Japanese slang term applied to kind of having strong feelings to characters. And there's a whole book which is trying to define this term, and everyone has a different spin on what the term means, when it came about, how it used. It's kind of over, it's done.
It's just to sort of butt in there. It's like you get that a lot with anime series. I don't know what it is about how like Japanese portray their characters or whatever it is, but you do get the feels for the characters a lot more. And I'm not meaning like weird pervy sexual ones. What I mean is like when you're watching I used to love One Piece a lot, and everything got really, really super about friendship and bonding, and sometimes you would just see these moments and you would get a little bit of the fake allergies going on in the corner of the eye, and you're like, wow, I'm so drawn into this. And I don't, you do get it in Western culture, don't get me wrong, but these are like 15-minute animated episodes, and it's so over the top. They've got like special powers, and they've got this level of yeah.
I think that's it. Is that it's not about, and this is what some of these books are saying, is that it's no longer about stories. And in fact, the stories in many of these things are, as we've already covered, quite tropey and fall into that. It's about what these characters represent and how people identify with them, or prefer one or the other, or who's your favorite character in this series? Who's your favorite character in this series? And kind of the Neptunia series is one of those where it's so much of that going on, and again, I just think it's just really interesting how we interpret it, because in Japan, and in other parts of Asia as well, it's just a normal thing that happens. Prefectures will have a anime girl mascot. Waste collectors have an anime girl mascot, and so when we kind of see it, or when it comes, when it gets to us, it's just we're looking at things from a whole different kind of perspective or culture.
Is the British equivalent the Churchill dog then?
God, no. Because I think obviously with a lot of these things, and this is evident with the Neptunia series, is that they are designed to be as likable and cute as possible. I was watching some screenshots of the watching a video, of the RPG, and one of the characters in that Metroidvania platformer one are essentially rocket slimes from Dragon Quest, but with cat ears. It's the lowest common denominator. It's people like this kind of thing. What do people also like? Oh, those like cat ears. Cat ears are cute. Okay, all of our enemies are now rocket
it's not
slimes with
cat ears.
ears.
Hang on. They are actually a staple of the Neptunia series as an enemy. They're called dogus. So like dog and goo mixed together. So they're slimes that are dogs. And they are a staple. You get metal dogus, you get giant dogus, you get green. Yeah, sorry.
Lowest common denominator. Oh, slimes are really popular from Dragon Quest. Everyone loves animals. Let's just put those together. And that's one of the characters, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to get off your chest? Anything else you wanted to get off your chest? With, the Neptunia series. I guess I've got one more question.
Okay.
You can probably guess where this is going. Who is the best of the characters?
Oh man.
Who is your Neptunia pick?
Waifu.
Or waifu, you may have said in lesser enlightened times.
I tend to always gravitate towards Vert as my favorite. Vert is waifu.
The one who rocked around in thongs with massive jugs. But at least she looks a little. At least she looks older.
She does, yeah. She does.
That's a safe pick.
It is a safe pick. That being said, I do like Noir as well. I think she's got actually the coolest of the set of moves and things like that.
But then how much of your kind of love and appreciation of the actual consoles comes into that decision?
Zero, absolutely zero. As I said, it took me a while to get my head around the concepts of what consoles they actually were. You'd never get told expressly from the start that they are. I just knew that was the concept behind it, and I didn't. And I suppose this is rather telling based on what we were just sort of saying. I didn't really care because they were just characters, and you just you go with it, and then you gain a different level of appreciation once you start to think, of course, it's the Xbox. That makes sense, But beyond that, I think it's Vert first, Xbox second sort of thing, and then it's the same with like Neptune. You know, like Neptune first, then oh yeah, of course, it's supposed to be a console. You can't really relate the two. I don't think your love of one particular console, especially, I mean, how many people are avid, solid fans of the Saturn? You know.
Well, again, I think the answer would be in Japan. Quite a few more.
Yes.
And 4 people in the UK who not only owned a Saturn, but owned more than one game.
Yeah. Sure. Okay.
When it came out 19 years after it came out elsewhere in the world.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Did you ever own a Saturn?
No, I never owned a Saturn. I owned a Dreamcast for like 6 months, and only for Resident Evil Code Veronica.
Yeah, that's a weird thing. I think Master System. Well, from my memory of it, Master System was nowhere near as popular as the NES, and the Mega Drive was super popular. Then nobody I know, was Sega Saturn, Mega CD stuff. And then it seemed like, I don't know why this happened, but everyone I know had a Dreamcast.
Oh, okay. I
Despite
didn't know
the
that.
fact-
I don't know that many people who owned a Dreamcast. I actually bought a Dreamcast quite late on in it, purely because I was thinking, is Code Veronica ever going to come out on another system? Admittedly, it did. It ended up coming out on GameCube and PS2.
Every single other system post Dreamcast.
But I ended up just like picking one up, but only for that. And I wasn't interested in any of the other series. And controversially, I had Shenmue, hated it. I mean, it was not. I didn't think it was actually a game, but I never played it long enough.
I knew when we started talking about Dreamcast, you'd bust out your I hate Shenmue.
Yeah, but along with that, what was out at the same time as the Saturn? Was it the N64 and PlayStation?
No, I don't know. I don't even remember seeing. Let me look into it.
I mean, if it's
95.
when was the PlayStation? That was like 96, wasn't it?
OG PlayStation. Someone's not edited this Wikipedia page as all the other pages.
PlayStation console, 1994. So yeah, the Sega Saturn
okay.
was up against like the PlayStation, which was massive, and also up against the what's it called, the N64. So I think those were much bigger consoles than the Saturn could ever be. And yeah, like you said, Sega did fritter away as well. Like nobody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can, occasionally now you'll still, if you're in some shitty seaside town, you'll still see some, completely unlicensed, garishly shit painted on wood Sega logo hanging off a building.
Yeah.
Yeah. They kind of completely vanished from our shores anyway. But now they make such excellent games as Valkyria Chronicles, Alien Isolation.
Yeah, they did the other Mario versus Sonic at the Olympics.
Oh yeah, those are great.
What's the other one? They've done all the Alien games. They had like Alien versus Predator and.
Not many of those were good though, were they, Richie?
I don't know. I certainly wasn't involved in any way in their development, so I'm not going to comment.
It was a bad run until fairly recently.
Yeah. Okay, I think we should just wrap up, but let's wrap up with a little fun fact.
Okay.
What does Sega mean, or where does the name come from?
Is the word ages backwards?
That's a good one. But that is not true.
to be that good takes ages.
Yeah. And then the logo spins as Sonic runs past very quickly.
Sega do what Nintendo don't.
Again, another good answer. Not the right one.
I know.
You're ruining the
Tell me.
actual. You're right. You're ruining the actual
Okay,
true
alright,
thing.
okay.
It's an amalgamation of segmented gaming. So initially, I know it's not very interesting, but
You decided that's what we're going to end the podcast on.
Well, it's a fucking fun fact.
Is that fun? Segmented gaming. What about that idea is fun?
Because that's how they started off. Like they'd made these sort of individual gaming cabinets, you know, that's sort of segmented gaming. Sega.
So, what does that mean?
Well, I was also going to comment on an old colleague of mine who used to refer to Sega as Sega. You may remember.
Occasionally you come across those kind of people, and those people are, whatever context, bad people. If you're in love with someone right now and you're thinking maybe this person's the one and we're going to kind of get shacked up and get married, just show them the Sega logo and say, how do you pronounce that? And if they say Sega, despite the fact at the beginning of half of their fucking games, it tells you exactly how you pronounce the fucking thing. They're a wrong un, and you should get out now.
Quite fucking right. That's our feud from 2008 with the Giant Enemy Guitar Hero. Check it out in the blog. But yeah, I think we're done. We'll say arigato gozaimasu.
Arigato gozaimasu.
Bye.
Bye.